this off with what's just a terrific word, and it is one that in my career has been at just about every inflection point, and that is change. And how we manage change, how we embrace change, and we look at change. And I don't mean, as Tony pointed out, same comment, it's not change for change's sake. It is how innovation and changes in the world and technology, and you hear our other speakers today talk a bit about technological changes and how we as an institution or institutions in the financial area keep up with change. But it's how we deal with it, how we embrace it. And you're going to be dealing with that in your careers as well. So the unlikely path, as John pointed out, I took a very entry-level position out of completing my undergraduate studies. Starting salary for a clerk on the trading floor back in 1987 was $14,000 a year. Didn't really strike my parents, who just finished paying for my education at Northwestern. 14 grand was really not the starting point that they thought I'd have, but it offered me an opportunity to take a look at a world and take risk that I would not necessarily have done if I took a more traditional approach. It also offered the opportunity, the feedback was instantaneous. Tony talked about a report card and tips. Clerks, traders, and anyone in the industry back in the 80s and 90s and even the early 2000s, we got a report card. It was every day, and it was a P&L. It was very refreshing to me to know that I make these decisions, I get my answers, and I get my report card. So the feedback was pretty terrific, and it appealed to my personality. But an unlikely path as it was, I never envisioned that moment I walked on the floor of the CBOE in 1987 without having any knowledge of what calls or puts were. There were no advanced options classes back in the 80s at the undergraduate level. What it allowed for, though, as I say, is the ability to continue to challenge yourself and ask questions. And it's what I did continuously. I pestered those around me. I had to know what was going on and why. And I formed my own decisions, conclusions, and I tested them every day as a clerk. I eventually was promoted to a trader, spent years trading, because I was so very comfortable, and I expected to last my entire career on the floor of the CBOE trading stock options. It came very naturally. Back in those days, it was not as quantitative as it is today. It was basically, to tell you the truth, being very good at 7th grade mathematics, adding and subtracting fractions, and managing risk in your head. A lot of statistical estimates, and that came very, very naturally. But as we looked at the technology and the change in the environment, there was change coming. And I saw that the exchange was very interested in staying at the forefront of what was happening competitively. And CBOE had a terrific management team. And they relied on the members of the exchange for input in an expertise that they didn't have. I said, boy, that makes such perfect sense. We are good at this one thing, it is trading. There is a management team that is good at managing the exchange. But in order for CBOE to succeed and to go forward as a leader in the industry, the two had to get together. It was a perfect opportunity to me to volunteer for volunteer committees at that time. So members got together with staff in a room, and we talked about things that may be coming and changes in the industry. It appealed to me. It was completely different than what I was doing every day, but I got to keep my day job. My very interesting trading career was not put on hold, but I was able to take on some new and completely different responsibilities. It taught me a lot of things. There was a lesson there. There was a different approach to doing things. It didn't have to rely on just me making a trading decision. I can use the expertise in a room and help the room come to a better conclusion than they would have without me there. And I borrowed that strategy for myself and applied it to my trading skills. They got better. So I had my first lesson, and it's just observing the way others worked in an environment that was completely different than mine. So as things changed, CBOE was about to undergo its biggest change to date, and that was, as John hinted, changing from a very traditional face-to-face open outcry exchange, something I think I was pretty good at, to embracing technology in a whole and completely different way. And it was making the membership very uneasy. We were challenging people's livelihoods. If you can imagine, we were all very secure in what we were doing. We were pretty good at it. But change and competitively said, that's not going to be the same tomorrow. This technology is here to stay. And the manner in which you adopt that change is going to affect your future. So people were very, very nervous. At that point, I was volunteering for more and more activity at CBOE. I ran for the board of directors. Members then ran the exchange as governance. So I ran for a member of the board of directors. I failed to receive the nomination my first time. So you will fail, and it's okay. Came back the next year, went up to the nominating committee again with whole new bright ideas on how to fix the CBOE. That really wasn't broken, but I had these great ideas. And I received the nomination, and I was able to serve at the board of directors and represent my fellow members. So here's the opportunity. Change is coming. There is a mismatch between management's expectation and the floor, which is very entrenched in the way they were doing business that day. It allowed me the opportunity to communicate with my peers and express the vision of management going forward. And I will tell you the lesson there in communication. You cannot over-communicate. You may tell me something once and you think you've told me. You haven't, I didn't listen. You tell me 2 times. I vaguely recall you might have mentioned something like that. You say it 3, 4, and 5 times, honestly, and the same message, then people start to hear. So the message and the lesson there was in communication. It was totally honest, and as often as people needed to hear it. And we eventually made a very successful transition from a traditional open outcry exchange to a hybrid exchange, one that embraces both technology and the benefits of the older way of doing things, the way I grew up. So I was learning a number of lessons throughout my career, and it continued to open different opportunities for me. I didn't have to do the same things I was doing prior or previous. So eventually my expertise ran out. My ability to trade was replaced by the next generation's more quantitatively based, heavy math background, a manner in which they approached trading. I was done. So I really curtailed my day-to-day trading. I hired a bunch of young traders who had gifts that I didn't have. Third lesson, I examined my own strengths and weaknesses, and you will have them. I would imagine, I talked to a lot of you when I walked in today, and there are some just terrific educations that you're all receiving, the best educational institutions in the country. You are not going to be good at everything. It's impossible. Keep asking yourself and being honest with yourself where your weaknesses are, and surround yourself with those that have different gifts. We all have different gifts. So I started a very small trading firm for a very brief amount of time. The chairman at the time, John mentioned Bill Brodsky, he offered me a position in senior management as executive vice chairman. Fit my skill set very, very well. I shortly did a stint as president and COO. I wasn't the great president COO. Managing operationally a major institution that is heavily technology wasn't my strength. Mine was selling. I wanted to be in front of our customers and our end users. And eventually the board last year offered me the job as CEO. So it is a very crooked path. It's an exciting one. Make the mistakes, take the chances, communicate, and identify your own weaknesses as often as you possibly can. Thanks.